So since making the last video, we've had a few questions about being able to see more patterns on the screen, what happens when we change the volume, what happens when we change the frequency, and so hopefully in this video I'll be able to show you all of that. I've also made a couple of changes to the setup. One is that the speaker is now in the vertical position. That allows me to get a longer distance to the screen, so I've got the laser beam still here shining up onto the mirror. The other change here is that the mirror is much smaller. It's a little glass mirror that we've got on there now, and it's super glued onto the membrane. So it's much tighter in terms of its coupling onto the membrane is much tighter. Last time we were using tape, and that tape probably was absorbing some of the sound. So that's probably about as good as we can get. The other change that I've made is on the other side of the room, and that's on the screen itself. So I don't know if you can see there, maybe if I change angles you'll be able to see, that I've actually put the screen at an angle. So if we stand here in line with the speaker is here, the laser is coming from here, you should be able to see there that the screen is actually at an angle. And that's because when I was shining the light onto the screen before, I noticed that a lot of the patterns were very narrow. And so by putting the screen at an angle, it kind of increases that distance. Whenever the laser goes from side to side, now it'll be looking a bit bigger. So we get to a bigger spread. The pattern is a bigger spread. All right, so I've got the camera set up. I've got the software installed on my machine here. This software I'm using allows me to create 3 different tones at any time. I can change the frequency, I can change the type of the tone, and I can change the amplitude or the volume. So in this demonstration, all I'm going to do is change the frequency. I'm not going to change the type of tone. All of them are going to be sine waves. So let's have a go. First of all, I need to turn the lights off, and if you have an Amazon Echo, you might want to put it on mute now. Alexa, turn lights off. Okay. All right, so here we go. First of all, I'm just going to play a 220 hertz tone into the speaker. And there we have it. So because I've got the screen at an angle, because I've got the projection screen at an angle, you can actually see more of a loop than you would have been able to see before. And so if I change the amplitude of that, in other words, the volume, then you can see obviously it gets smaller and it gets larger, which is pretty much what we'd imagine we could see. But things get really interesting when we start to change the frequency. So here I'm going to change the frequency. So I'm going down, and you can hear it going down. Now the interesting thing here is that I'm not changing the amplitude at all, I'm only changing the frequency, yet the size of the loop is changing a lot. And that's got to do with the resonant frequencies of the speaker and of the membrane in front of it and the little piece of mirror and everything else. As we hit those resonant frequencies, it changes the size that the laser displays. So we can go all the way down. And it's only really the low frequencies which we're going to see here. Any higher frequencies wouldn't be catered for by this particular speaker, so we're not going to see them. We're going all the way down, and you can start to see it sort of goes still quite graceful. It's still quite organized as a loop, but all the way down there. And then I can go up. So let's wind this knob all the way up. And what we'll see is that it'll start to get smaller and smaller. Even though in here I can hear the sine wave at the same level, it's getting smaller and smaller because the speaker's responding less and less to that frequency. And you get up to around here and really you're not going to see any more past this point. So let's put that all the way back down to about 200. Let's get ourselves a nice size of a circle. There we go. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce another sine wave. And so I'll turn this one right down, so the amplitude right down, so we can introduce it slowly. I'm going to hit this play button, and then I can introduce it into the mix. Now this tone is ever so slightly higher than the one that we already have. Now one thing I can't do with this tool is change the phase of the waves, but that shouldn't really matter when we're dealing with different frequencies. So there you go, I start to introduce the different frequency, and these are the patterns we start to get. and tweaking the frequencies a bit. And turning the frequency down a bit. So you can see by adding two different frequencies, it really makes a huge difference to what happens on the screen. And those frequencies there, so close together that we're getting a really, really low beat frequency. I'll let you look that up. And down we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put this camera down and I'm going to play around with different frequencies and look to see what patterns we can get. Well, I hope you found that interesting. If there's any more kinds of waves that you want to see put up on the screen, then let me know. Otherwise, see you in the next video.